Welcome to the National Council for Hypnotherapy podcast, where we dive into the fascinating world of hypnosis, lifting the lid on hypnotherapy, sharing insights and tips for change as we chat. So sit back, relax, and enjoy all the wonderful possibilities of hypnotherapy. My name is Tracey Grist, and I will be your host today. So I'm here today with Lynn Mildner, and Lynn is a solution-focused hypnotherapist, private practice in Tring. Is that correct?
Well, yes, my practice is actually in Hemel Hempstead. It's a bit more
Oh.
Tring. So, yes.
Brilliant. So how long have you been practicing? What led you to hypnotherapy?
Well, I'm a newbie. I've only been practicing for 2 years. And what led me to hypnotherapy was that I used to do an incredibly stressful job in the city. I used to deal with financial insurances, which is very stressful. And if you get it wrong, people sue you for an awful lot of money. So it's the stress levels are massive. I've also ridden all my life, ridden horses. And I just suddenly found that I got very nervous about riding my horse, to the degree I started not riding my horse. And there's a man who lives near me who specialises, he's actually now a stunt man, and he specialises in doing rider confidence courses. And I went along to one of his courses, and part of it was hypnotherapy. And he mentioned in passing that he was also a qualified hypnotherapist. He trained with Clifton Practice in Bristol, had a practice in Bristol for a long time, but then his stunt and film work took over. So the only time he actually applied it now was in rider confidence. And I just got so fascinated by all the neuroscience. And I kind of thought I might be able to use this to help my team because of the stressful nature of our work. So I signed up for a course with Clifton Practice. But me being me, I didn't read all the blurb properly. So it was one weekend a month, and I thought, oh, yeah, I can do that. And I thought it was like doing, car maintenance or cookery or something like that, that it would give me a bit of a skill set to help my team. And it wasn't until I was a fair way into the course I suddenly realised this was a diploma. And the work rate ramped up and up and up and up and up. But I was so fascinated, actually, that I don't remember it being a horrific workload, doing it alongside my day job. But and the more I did it, the more the focus just became more hypnotherapy and less insurance. So.
Oh. And what was your how did it resonate with you? What made you go, oh, this is brilliant?
I think the understanding of how our brains work and the understanding as well that you don't have to live with stress and anxiety in your life. So it's something that I think in the modern age we think is inevitable. And, when you speak to people and you go, hello, how are you? They go, oh, stressed, it's manic. And it was just that slow realization that you can still be an effective human being in any field. You don't have to carry that dreadful stress around with you. So I think that's what the appeal was.
Yeah, because it's a big leap from insurance and day-to-day fear of being sued to
It is. And because the hysterical thing, of course, that insurance is all about you saying, well, what if? What if that happened? What if that happened? That's your life. That's what you're paid to do, is to think, what if? You go to do hypnotherapy and you say to people, oh, no, don't what if? So, it was an interesting leap, but one I'm so glad. I mean, it's the best mistake I've ever made, put it that way.
So how do you work? Do you have a particular niche, a way of working? Are there topic areas that you prefer to be with?
Yeah, so I left. I've got my qualification and everything, and then went, right, I'm used to a corporate background. I'm going to work with corporate people. And somebody said, oh, there's a good sort of add-on thing about working with children
Yeah.
coming up. And I went, well, I'm not doing that because barely tolerated my own children, let alone other people's. And I now find myself never working with corporates. Well, I've got one that I've worked with recently, but spend my time working a lot with teenagers.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find, without obviously disclosing any client information, but do you find that there's particular themes that teenagers come with?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
sort
Massively.
of see?
I was always one of those people who, when everybody blamed everything on COVID, I was always one of those people that went, oh, for goodness sake, COVID was a period in time and it's gone. But what I'm seeing with teenagers, particularly with teenagers that haven't been to school for a year, they just can't face going to school, is that you realize that COVID, I think, for children of all ages that were school age in particularly and teenagers has affected them massively because they've lost out on the skills of being part of a community of people.
Yeah.
So I think what happens to them a lot is in normal times, you would go to school, you'd have a falling out with one of your friendship group, but because you were in school again the next day and you saw them, you kind of rubbed along for a few days and eventually made it up. And you learned that people fall out with people, people might be a bit nasty to you, but it blows over.
Yeah.
Whereas in the COVID years, and for a lot of kids, it sort of affected nearly 2 years of their lives, which is quite a lot in a young life and informative years. That what happens to them is that they were in chat groups, and that's where their socialization happens, is in chat groups. And so if somebody upsets you, either they or you cut them out of the chat group.
Yeah.
So so if someone's vaguely nasty to you, you cut them adrift. I don't want to talk to her today, so you cut them adrift, and that's it. It becomes a permanent sort of schism, and so they feel very vulnerable in big groups of people. Where they have one-to-one friendships more rather than group friendships, but hanging out as a gang.
Yeah.
And so I think that affects a lot of school attendance issues because they just find school a very hostile place to be.
Well, it's huge, isn't it? Because you and I were just discussing before we recorded about working in person. So for me, working in person is important, as is working online. I like to be with people and watch their body movements and be and have the whole person in front of me. And I think certainly in those big environments when you're in school and you're in a class of 30 or whatever number and you've fallen out with somebody, you're making eyes at each other across the room, or you've been forced to work together, or something happens, like those interpersonal interactions that just about other things and not about the falling out are so
They
important.
are. Yeah.
Way over COVID.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's affected them massively. They conflict resolution isn't something that comes naturally to them. It's something that they find somebody else has to intercede in, like a teacher
Yeah.
or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's such a shame.
Well, also because of their brain makeup, when we're going through those developmental stages, you're not learning peace, you're learning to cause chaos, to leave home.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, exactly. And so they don't sort of accept that that's kind of normal and natural. And it's been a common theme with all the teenagers I've worked with who don't
Right.
go to school. It's been a really
Yeah.
common theme.
So, are there any top tips if they're, well, unlikely teens, but parents maybe listening? Is there any advice or any tips that you might give?
Yeah, actually, I advise the parents not to talk about the school issue because the school issue is a symptom. It's not the end thing. So I tend to, because there'll be other forms of therapists I know listening to this, but in solution focused hypnotherapy, we don't actually talk really about the problem. We just talk about how you can increase your happiness levels. And so, really, for the first few sessions, we never talk about school.
Yeah.
We'll talk about lots of other things and lots of other things that have made them happy. And then inevitably, it seems to come round to that they want to get back into school. So then when you start to say, well, what will make you feel that little bit happier this week? They say, I'd like to see some of my friends. I want to actually go into school. So then they start setting an agenda for how they think they can manage it. So it might be just going in for the lunch break and not
Mm.
going to any lessons, just going in for the lunch break, just to learn to socialize a little bit. And then the biggest struggle I have is with the schools
Okay.
because I try and get the school to agree that basically they can come to school, and bearing in mind safeguarding that somebody has to come and pick them up. They can't just wander out the gates on their own. But that if at any point in the day that child feels that they don't want to be at school, that the panic's beginning to rise and they don't want to be there, that they can go to the office and ask for someone to be called to come and get them immediately, with no questions asked, no cajoling, that they know they're not trapped there, that they can leave whenever they want to, so they're totally in control. And most of them do it once or twice just to check the system, just to check it works. And then after that, they don't. But it's because they're setting their own agenda. So they might go in for various lessons that they know that they like, that their friendship group are in or whatever, and then they start stretching it out from there.
Yeah.
And most of them have a really good plan. Like, when they're saying, right, well, I think this is what I can cope with next, and this will lead to that. You're like, oh, that's impressive. So all of them that I've worked with ultimately want to go back to school because that's where their normality is.
And I suppose it's that want, and then it's creating that program of how to return, because
Mm.
those feelings of being trapped, as we all know, like when you see somebody for fear of flying, or like for me on the underground, like I'm trapped in this moving thing, and
Yeah,
I
I'm
suppose
out of control here.
yeah, yeah, and children feeling trapped at school, hard.
It is massive. But once they realise that actually they're not, and they start to work out other strategies as well. So rather than going to school, the office, and asking for somebody to go and get their parent, they might just go to the loo and take 5 minutes time out for a second. They learn other strategies within the school grounds eventually, so that they cope.
Yeah.
Mm.
Interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine whose partner, he said she does it all the time when we go. I don't know if I've gone off on a tangent, but when they're walking around, and I was thinking about it, is that when they're walking around, she goes, "Where are the children?" And and I think when I'm walking around Balham, where are the children? Because you don't see children out playing anymore. I know, like times are different, but it always used to be growing up. Like we were certainly the children abandoned in the come home when the lights go on. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Come home when you get hungry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like we never went out with a bottle of water. I never had a bottle of water growing up. I didn't know whether it did me any good or not. But all of those things, and if children aren't out playing, then their only social group is connected to the family. Or
Mm.
where are they? Is it sports? Is it what? And we certainly navigated, and not safely either, navigated like hiding from bullies or,
Yeah,
they're smoking down there, run this way. And,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Or you
and
go out for a bike ride and your bike chain breaks and you
yeah,
have to fix it. So you learn to be resourceful. I
yeah,
think that's
yeah,
what they're not learning, is to be resourceful, because there's always a parent hovering over them ready to fix everything.
yeah. And I suppose that resilience, if they're sort of negotiating a plan back to school, they're getting that confidence to say, this is the way that I want it to work.
Mm.
Hard, hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And then I always, just drop a message to the parent later, go, right, this is the plan going forward. And I'm quite strict with the parents, like, to start with, that this is about the child. The
Yeah.
child's the one that builds the plan, not them. And they have to support it. They
Yeah.
have to support the child's plan. They can't undermine it by saying, well, look, if you're going in for art and then you want to go in for lunch, why don't you just stay for geography? They can't do
Yeah.
that. They have to support it so that
Yeah.
the child feels totally in control of the whole process. And once they feel they've got control, they don't care about having control anymore. So,
No, that's it. That's it. Gosh. Yeah. Yeah. And so is this where you're going to be focused in? Is this where you like working? How does it
it's
suit?
where I like working, but I actually also quite like the variation of people that come my way. I love fixing phobias. That whole kind of
you?
flying thing.
Yeah.
So many like little holiday postcards from people going, here, it was brilliant. And I had a lovely thing from a client recently. She was terrified of being on a boat on water. She grew up near the coast and she'd been on lots of boats, and she'd always been terrified. She was sick before she got on, sick all the time she was on, and then sick for the day after she got off. So it wasn't motion sickness. And she was a widow who had this new man friend who wanted to take her on a cruise. So she came to me, and one of the things that I did at the end of the hypnosis, you always kind of bring them out to a lovely image. So I the image I brought them out to was, and I want you to kind of imagine that you're standing there on the deck and you're trying to get a selfie with you and your partner, and you're giggling because you just can't get it right. And so you're trying to get this selfie, you're giggling, and then finally you get that selfie. And I want you to have that selfie now in your brain, and I want you to form it up, look at it, and whatever. So last week I just got sent a picture of a selfie with
Oh,
her and the
that's
partner
nice.
against the sunset, and it just said
Yeah.
the selfie.
Great. Great.
So, and because it's such a short process fixing a phobia, but it has such a massive impact.
Yeah, yeah. And so how do you like, to me, that visualization and really enhancing a positive image is so valuable, isn't it?
It
And
is, because it gives them the image of why they're doing this. I'm vested in letting this phobia go because I could have that.
yeah, yeah. And that because you were saying earlier about the what ifs, and we constantly, don't we, look at like, what if this is not going to succeed? What if I get scared? Or
Yeah,
and and we're less likely to go, what if it's going to be an amazing experience?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, your primitive brain is there to keep you safe. So that's the one that's always going to have the loudest voice, isn't it?
Yeah. So what would you do in terms of, if I was coming to you for, I don't know, a mouse phobia? How would a phobia session look, or a series of sessions look?
So I would do it probably in 3 sessions. Well, no, 4 sessions. So I do an initial consultation where I explain to people how their brain works, how that phobia, where it lives in their brain, and how we're going to get rid of it. And then I might if the person seems like they're a fairly sort of anxious person anyway, there's anxiety there as well as the mouse phobia, then I would have another session just to talk about stress reduction, about how they can live their lives with a little bit less stress, give them some coping strategies to do that, and get them listening to the hypnosis as well, just so that they've done it once, so it's not weird when they come in to do it. And then the next time they come in, I would do a very NLP technique, which is a rewind technique.
Okay.
So you get them to have a couple of little images, like a couple of little reels of the moments when the fear has started to build.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, moment. And so, using that rewind technique, what you do is they know they're laying on your couch, and then you take them to a comfy chair in a room watching a television. So they know it's not happening now, so they're not going to panic. And then you take them through watching on a television. And I even say you've got the remote in your hand to press play. So they watch on the television this mouse appearing, this occasion or a couple of occasions that it's happened. And you play it forward and you play it back and you play it forward and you play it back and you fast forward it, fast rewind it. So you do it lots and lots of times. So you do it, I don't know, maybe 50 times eventually.
Yeah.
Little groups of 5 till in the end their brain is just bored of mice. And then we will overlay it with something funny. So they can put Snapchat filters on it, they can have funny music to it, the mouse can be a cartoon, whatever. Because funny, boring things don't kill you. They're no threat to you. So then they get removed from your hippocampus as being, this thing might kill you. This tiny mouse could come and give you heart failure. And then we just let their brain settle. And then the following week, we'll do a kind of reframey thing where they will go through a scenario of a perfect day. They see a mouse and they're quite relaxed about it and they take action, right. So the mouse appears, now what are you going to do? So then they've kind of got an action plan, but you do it under hypnosis so that their brain actually thinks that's already happened. So next time they see a mouse, they're like, oh yeah, last time I saw one of those, I got a bucket and put over it until my son came home.
Yeah.
They're okay with it. It's not a panic.
Yeah. So if that makes sense with, say, a mouse that actually isn't frightening, what happens? What do you do differently, or do you do anything differently if it's something that is dangerous? So if I'm frightened of being mauled by a bear and I'm
It's,
in a
it's
forest.
an interesting thing because you can only use that technique for a very specific phobia.
Yeah.
If it's a non-specific phobia, then you have to talk about anxiety reduction. So if it was something where you were terrified, for instance, that you were going to run into a bear, then you would start looking about, reducing the stress, because it's not about running into bears in the middle of Balham, is it? There's other stuff. There's a huge amount of what if building up there to get as far as bears in Balham. So there's a lot of anxiety there somehow. So that's what you'd work on. You'd work on the anxiety.
Yeah, okay. So if I was phobic of going on an aeroplane because they're a bit weird that they fly in the sky.
And
And
that turbulent stuff is just, yeah.
yeah, and of course I'm gonna die if I hit turbulence. Is it the same? How do you
That's a
work?
very specific phobia. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it's the same. So that we use exactly the same process. The last couple of times you flew, or the worst time you flew, and the last time you flew, have that little reel of when you were gripping the seats. I mean, I used to be afraid of flying as well. I used to keep the plane up by holding the seats. So yeah, so you'd use exactly that technique, and it works. Works amazingly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get postcards, as I say, from people saying, I'm here, it was fine.
It's so nice. I think certainly as a practitioner, things like fear of flying, you see the outcome, don't you?
Yeah,
You
you do.
thanks very much. People tend not to, they tend to thank you for things like going on holiday or making those choices, whereas I, it's different if you're working on like some of the stuff that people don't want to talk about or don't want to, like
Yeah,
self-esteem, all the things that we're a little bit embarrassed about being vulnerable with. Whereas it's
yeah,
okay to be scared of flying.
yeah. It's socially acceptable to be. We all know someone who's afraid of flying. It's socially acceptable, but maybe it's not socially acceptable to have other forms of anxiety that make you do quite peculiar things or be quite horrible to people. Like, when people are being horrible to their partner or their children, they know they're being horrible. They don't want to be doing it. It just happens because they're not in control of their mind. So, yeah, that becomes harder. Yeah. It's not harder to treat, but harder for them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think as practitioners, we come to the table working through some stuff and not other stuff. And because you were mentioning at the beginning that you were frightened of horse riding, so you
Yeah.
liked
I'd ridden all my
riding.
life, but suddenly I'd started what I think, what if I go out for a hack and she bolts? What if we get chased by a dog? What
Yeah,
if I fall over? Yeah, I fall off in the woods and no one discovers me for hours. Yeah, all those stupid things. So yeah,
yeah, because I don't think I've never ridden a horse, partly because I think that's really high. That's really high to sit on, and
and that
then
thing's got a mind of its own.
no. And I've seen their ears go like this, like, and their mouths and teeth. I don't. And did something happen that made you start to get more fearful, or was it just
No, no, I think it was the old thing, that stress built up because work was incredibly stressful at the time. And I think just over time, my stress levels built up. And I think after a while, your brain sort of, it goes into fight flight mode and never finds anything to run away from. So I think eventually your brain starts going, well, look, there's got to be something scary around here. What is it? Why is it we're so scared? And, probably I heard a story about somebody getting bolted with or read something, and then all of a sudden your brain goes, oh, that could be dangerous. So,
and then it just sticks? I've got a reactive dog called Bear, not a bear in Balham.
ah,
But what I realized, particularly going through the perimenopause, is I became way more anxious about him being reactive. And I could
yeah,
feel that anxiety building of what if he goes for a dog? What if and he's all stuff and nonsense, but he doesn't actually attack. But I was kind of building that, what if he does this? What
yeah,
if he and to the point then I was like, well, we can only walk a bit and we can't see dogs. And then I thought, wow, this isn't normally you. What's going on, Tracy, that this is? And I think it's that point where it's like, I need a bit of help here just to pull back those what ifs and put them back in the box and let's walk Bear normally,
yeah,
or as normal as a dog walking on walls can be. But that's, and I think it's a good time to come for any therapy when you start feeling those what ifs.
yeah. I think actually you're right. I hadn't thought of it like that, but I think actually, yeah, maybe they are the signpost.
Yeah,
When you
yeah,
start building a future that looks scary and you think, why is that?
yeah.
None of that's happened and none of it's likely to happen, but why is that?
And it's funny because like 70% of Balham dogs are cockapoos, and
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
I
always
can imagine.
I always imagine like these big dogs, like with big mouths, like, and I'm thinking, this is not the general population of dogs in Balham, Tracy. What is going on?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Because I had a woman that came in and she was overall anxious. And one of the things that she said was, and now I've got, because she had a little dog of some sort of Pomeranian, I think it was. And she said, and now I've got these XL bullies to worry about. Have you come
yeah,
across one before? Well, no, I haven't. But apparently, according to the Daily Mail, they're
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah. And
It's
it's
never come
how
across
it,
one.
no, and it's that, isn't it? How we sort of talk it through in our heads, and that slipstream into, I don't know, creating more and more. So, if you had a top tip that you would give to a listener who's maybe suffering from a phobia or anxiety, or a teen that's like nervous about going into school, what would some top tips be?
My first top tip to absolutely everybody, and I think this should be taught from primary school children upwards, is
Yeah.
before you go to bed every night, just take a little notebook and write down 5 good things that happened in the day. And they don't have to be things you've done. It could be that while you were waiting at the bus stop, you could hear this little blackbird singing somewhere. And the important thing is to notice them at the time, to go, oh, that's one of the what's been good, so I'm going to write down in my book. Hark at that little bird, isn't that cute? Or the one of your friends shares their lunch with you because she forgot yours, whatever. Just 5 lovely things that have happened in the day. And then write them out when you go to bed, because then you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to have a brain stuffed with serotonin, which is a good place to start. And I would also say go and see a hypnotherapist, because people have this vision of therapy that one of my lecturers, if you're listening to this, thank you, Ali, for this phrase, refers to the snot and tears, the branches of therapy. Hypnotherapy is nothing like that. Everybody that I know that's had hypnotherapy, or my clients, walk out feeling a lot happier and a lot lighter than they came in. Nobody's going to sit there and dwell on your problem and pick away at it and make you feel bad. You're going to be helped to just get over it, because it's just the way brains work. And brains sometimes go into this bit of a loop where they focus on the wrong thing. So if somebody can just sort of like kickstart your brain back into a better way of working, do it. It will make such a difference.
Yeah, that's that's yeah, it's good. And I think the 5 good things of the day just make, I was just thinking, what are my 5 good things like? What would they be? One of them would be like putting nail varnish on without smudging it.
Yes, that's a win.
That's a
Absolutely.
real win.
Yeah. And yesterday, well, because I do it every day.
Yeah.
And one of mine yesterday was I went to Sainsbury's and I got the granny park, where you pull in and there's a space in front of you that's empty and you can pull into that. And one
Nice.
night got a granny park. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you know you've got to write 5 things down, you start making sure that you notice them.
Yeah.
That makes you a lot more mindful, because you just notice all these lovely moments. And then people say, oh, what gratitude diary? And I go, no, it's not gratitude. You don't have to be grateful for it, because gratitude to me implies that you're somehow not quite worthy of it. Someone's doing you a favor. Whereas
Mm.
all those things are there and happening anyway. That bird's going to sing whether you appreciate it or not. So you might as well appreciate it.
A noticing notebook.
Yes, I love that. A noticing notebook. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. We start looking for the good, and it's really hard if we come from a trauma. We're past. We're used to looking for the danger
Mm,
ahead, and our
that's what
bodies
we
and our
focus
brains
on.
naturally do that anyway. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah,
like
so
it.
I mean, I had it recently. I actually crashed my car. I drove into somebody on a roundabout. Hands up, my fault. And I was on the way to do my horse, so I did all the, exchanging details with the man. My car was still drivable, so I went off, did the horse, came back, phoned the insurance company, and they said, "Oh yeah, the other driver was one of our insureds as well, so he's already phoned it in. So we've got all the details. He did say it was your fault, though. Do you agree?" And I said, "Oh yeah, 100% it was my fault." So she went, "Okay, you'll just have to pay your own excess. So thank you." And I went, "Well, don't you want the details?" She said, "No, no, we've already got them from him." About 10 minutes later, their panel beaters company phoned me and said, "Right, when can we come out and see you? We'll drop off a loan car to you. So when can we come and do that?" And I was like, all I could focus on, and all I could tell my husband about in the evening was how brilliant the insurance company, not the trauma of having just crashed my car.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so when you start to focus on that stuff, even on the worst days, it's most important to do it. Just because then you realize the day is not unrelentingly written off because your bus doesn't come in the morning.
Yeah,
It doesn't lead to a bad day. It's just one thing that happens.
yeah. And then all of these other good things are there playing a part too to
Mm.
bring that lovely calm feeling that we all
Serotonin.
love.
I'm like a serotonin junkie.
I love it. I love it. So, if people want to get hold of you,
Mhm.
will we can put your link within this talk, and you're in Hempstead, are you?
Yeah, I am. So I'm actually called King's Langley Hypnotherapy Clinic, which I didn't really think through when I named it because I don't live in King's Langley anymore. Yeah,
Yeah,
so the web address is www.klhclinic.co.uk. So
yeah.
yeah.
So we'll pop that below, and then people can just click on the link. And you do online and in person as well.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've got some clients overseas, bizarrely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lovely.
So
That's the beauty of the internet, isn't it? We can keep all sorts of hours now.
you can. And work when we're on holiday.
Exactly, exactly. Negotiating the joys of life. I see. I love talking to people, so it isn't work.
No,
Yeah,
no,
it's
that's the bizarre thing, isn't it,
fun.
about being a
Yeah,
hypnotherapist? For the most part, it isn't work. It's just chatting to yet another really interesting person.
it's brilliant. I love it. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really
Oh, thank
appreciate
you.
getting to know you. It's been lovely.
It has, Tracy, it has.
Thanks very much. See
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.